The Oval Office has seen a lot of things: policy debates, war planning, historic speeches, but behind closed doors, and sometimes not even behind closed doors, some of these men were living double lives that would make a soap opera look boring. These are the 10 most promiscuous presidents in American history. And honestly, some of these stories are so wild, I had to double-check they were real. They are. Number 10. Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, founding father, author of the Declaration of Independence, third President of the United States, had a relationship with a woman named Sally Hemings. And here's what makes this story different from every other affair on this list. Sally Hemings was enslaved. She was Jefferson's property. She was around 14 years old when the relationship is believed to have started. Jefferson was 44. Now, for almost 200 years, the Jefferson family denied everything. Historians brushed it aside. It was treated as gossip. But in 1998, DNA evidence confirmed what many had suspected. At least one of Sally Hemings' 6 children was fathered by a Jefferson. Combine that with the historical record. The timing of her pregnancies lined up perfectly with Jefferson's presence, and even the Thomas Jefferson Foundation acknowledged the relationship as fact. But here's the part most people don't sit with long enough. Modern scholars are very clear about this. You cannot call this an affair. Sally Hemings was enslaved. She had no legal ability to say no. She had no freedom. She couldn't leave. What we now understand is that this was, by definition, a coercive relationship. Jefferson also had a documented romantic pursuit of his friend's wife, Betsy Walker, as a young man. And while serving as ambassador to France, he carried on an affair with a married woman named Maria Causeway. The man who penned the most famous words about human liberty was simultaneously denying that liberty to the woman sharing his bed. Jefferson is a reminder that the founders weren't marble statues. They were deeply complicated, and sometimes deeply hypocritical, human beings. And if that's where the story starts, buckle up, because it gets a lot more chaotic from here. Number 9. Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson married his wife Rachel in 1791. Normal enough, right? Except there was a small problem. Rachel's divorce from her first husband wasn't actually finalized yet, which meant, technically, Rachel was a bigamist. And by extension, Jackson was living with another man's wife. Jackson's opponents used this mercilessly. During the 1828 presidential campaign, newspapers called Rachel an adulteress. They called Jackson a homewrecker. Pamphlets were printed with explicit accusations. The attacks were so vicious and so personal that Rachel Jackson suffered a massive heart attack and died, just weeks after Jackson won the election. He hadn't even taken office yet. Jackson blamed his political enemies for her death and carried that rage with him into the White House. He reportedly said at her funeral, "May God Almighty forgive her murderers. I never can." Now, beyond the bigamy scandal, Jackson's personal life before his presidency involved a wild reputation on the frontier. He fought multiple duels, actually killed a man named Charles Dickinson in 1806, and was known as a hard-drinking, hard-living figure long before politics. The promiscuous label for Jackson is less about a string of affairs and more about a man who lived completely outside the rules of his era, including the rules about whose wife you're allowed to marry. Number 8. Grover Cleveland. In 1884, while running for president, the news broke that Cleveland had fathered a child with a woman named Maria Halpin about a decade earlier. Cleveland admitted it, publicly, which was actually unusual. Most politicians would have denied it. His opponents had a field day. Crowds chanted, "Ma, Ma, where's my pa? Gone to the White House, ha ha ha." Cleveland won anyway, twice. But here's where it gets dark. Maria Halpin filed an affidavit stating that Cleveland had forced himself on her. Her exact words, "by use of force and violence and without my consent." She said when she threatened to report him, Cleveland told her he would ruin her even if it cost him $10,000. After the child was born, Cleveland had Halpin committed to a mental institution and sent the baby to an orphanage. He then gave her $500 to go away. For over a century, this was framed as a sex scandal. Modern historians are increasingly calling it what it actually was, something far more serious. Cleveland is on this list not because he was a playboy. He's here because his story illustrates how presidential scandals used to be swept under the rug, reframed, and laughed off. "Ma, Ma, where's my pa?" was treated as a funny campaign chant. The woman behind it had her life destroyed. And Cleveland? He served 2 terms. Number 7. Warren G. Harding. Warren G. Harding once told reporters, and this is a real quote, "It's a good thing I'm not a woman. I'd always be pregnant. I can't say no." He was not exaggerating. Harding maintained as many as 7 mistresses simultaneously while in office. 7. His most famous affair was with Nan Britton, a woman 31 years younger than him. They reportedly conceived their daughter on a couch in his Senate office. And after Harding became president, they continued their relationship in a coat closet inside the White House. A coat closet. In the White House. The Secret Service reportedly stood guard outside while the President of the United States was inside a closet with his mistress. But Britton wasn't even his longest affair. That title goes to Carrie Fulton Phillips, his best friend's wife. They carried on for 15 years. In 2014, love letters between Harding and Phillips were finally made public. They were detailed, very detailed. Hundreds of pages of explicit material that would make most people blush. Harding had a pet name for his anatomy that he used throughout the letters. Historians had to read all of it, with a straight face, for academic purposes. Harding died in office in 1923, of a heart attack. Some have speculated, though it's never been proven, that his wife Florence may have had something to do with it. She refused an autopsy. Whether that's conspiracy theory or not, the fact that people found it believable tells you everything about how Harding's marriage was perceived. His presidency is consistently ranked among the worst in history. The scandals weren't just in the bedroom, Teapot Dome, corruption across his cabinet, but his personal life became the headline that stuck. Harding is the cautionary tale of a president who couldn't say no to anyone about anything. Number 6. Franklin D. Roosevelt. Now, you met FDR in the Most Loved Presidents video, top 3 all time. Led the country through the Depression and World War II. 4 terms, a giant of American history. But behind the scenes, there was a whole other story. FDR's affair with Lucy Mercer began around 1916, years before he became president. Lucy was Eleanor Roosevelt's social secretary. That's right, FDR was sleeping with his wife's employee. Eleanor found the love letters in 1918. She confronted Franklin. The couple considered divorce, but FDR's mother threatened to cut him off financially. His political advisor warned that divorce would end his career. So they stayed together, but the marriage was never the same. The arrangement became an open secret in Washington. FDR and Eleanor essentially lived separate lives under the same roof. She threw herself into activism, politics, and public service. He continued seeing Lucy Mercer on and off for decades, even while commanding the Allied war effort. And Lucy wasn't the only one. Historians have documented FDR's close relationship with his personal secretary, Missy LeHand, who lived in the White House and was widely understood to be more than just an employee. Here's the gut punch ending. When FDR suffered his fatal stroke on April 12, 1945, he wasn't with Eleanor. He was with Lucy Mercer. She was at his side at his retreat in Warm Springs, Georgia. Eleanor didn't find out until after his death. The most powerful president of the 20th century, the man who saved democracy, died in the company of the woman his wife had discovered 27 years earlier. Eleanor reportedly never forgave him. FDR is proof that greatness and personal failure can exist in the same person, in the same breath, on the same day. Number 5. Dwight D. Eisenhower. Now, Eisenhower might seem like an odd name on this list. The quiet, steady, play golf on weekends president. But during World War II, before he ever reached the Oval Office, Ike was stationed in England as Supreme Allied Commander, and he was assigned a personal driver, an Irish woman named Kay Summersby. What happened next depends on who you believe. After Eisenhower died, Summersby published a memoir titled Past Forgetting: My Love Affair with Dwight D. Eisenhower. In it, she claimed they were deeply in love throughout the war, that they tried to be intimate, but Eisenhower struggled physically. She attributed it to stress and his heavy smoking habit. Some historians believe every word. Others call the book a fabrication. What we do know is that multiple wartime observers, including Omar Bradley, Winston Churchill, and various staff members, acknowledged that the two were extremely close. A Chicago Tribune reporter reportedly quipped that he'd never before seen a chauffeur get out of a car and kiss the general good morning. The most explosive detail? President Truman later claimed that Eisenhower wrote to General George Marshall asking for permission to divorce his wife Mamie and marry Kay. Marshall reportedly threatened to destroy Eisenhower's career if he went through with it. Eisenhower backed down. He returned to America. He never spoke to Kay Summersby again. Whether it was a full affair or a wartime love story that never fully materialized, Ike's relationship with Kay Summersby is one of the most debated personal stories in presidential history. And the fact that the Supreme Commander of D-Day, the man who planned the largest military operation ever, was allegedly ready to throw it all away for his driver? That tells you something about how powerful the heart is, even for a five-star general. Number 4. John F. Kennedy. Okay, now we get to the name everyone's been waiting for. Because when it comes to presidential affairs, JFK is in a league of his own. John F. Kennedy was, by virtually all historical accounts, compulsively unfaithful. We're not talking about one affair, or two. We're talking about a pattern so relentless that his own Secret Service detail had code systems for keeping track of who was coming and going. The confirmed and credibly alleged list includes a 19-year-old White House intern, a famous actress whose name you definitely know, a socialite named Judith Campbell Exner, actress Angie Dickinson, Gene Tierney. And that's just what historians have been able to document. But here's where it stops being celebrity gossip and starts being a national security crisis. Judith Campbell Exner, the woman JFK was seeing, was simultaneously involved with Sam Giancana, one of the most powerful mob bosses in America. The President of the United States was sharing a romantic partner with the head of the Chicago Mafia. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover knew about all of it, every affair, every name, every entry and exit, and he used that information as leverage. Hoover essentially had a permanent blackmail card on the president. Whatever Hoover wanted, budget, autonomy, protection, Hoover got. Because one phone call to the press would have ended the Kennedy presidency overnight. The press knew too. Reporters saw women coming and going from the White House. But in the 1960s, there was an unwritten rule. You didn't report on a president's personal life. The media looked the other way, every single time. Kennedy's recklessness wasn't just a personal flaw, it was a genuine threat to national security. A president being blackmailed by his own FBI director, a president sharing a lover with the mob. These aren't tabloid details. They're the kind of vulnerabilities that intelligence agencies spend their entire existence trying to exploit. JFK remains one of the most beloved presidents in public polls. Charismatic, inspiring, frozen in time by an assassin's bullet at 46. But the full picture is far more complicated than Camelot. Number 3. Lyndon B. Johnson. Lyndon Johnson's approach to extramarital affairs was the same as his approach to everything else. Loud, aggressive, and completely unapologetic. He carried on a 20-year affair with a woman named Madeline Brown and a 30-year affair with socialite Alice Glass, later Alice Marsh. His wife Lady Bird reportedly knew about many of these relationships and was, as her obituary would eventually state, openly humiliated throughout their marriage. But it wasn't just the affairs. LBJ had a legendary habit of establishing what historians have politely called genital dominance. He would skinny dip in the White House pool with staffers present. He conducted meetings from the bathroom. And he had a pet name for his anatomy, Jumbo, which he was apparently not shy about sharing with anyone, world leaders included. When a reporter once asked him why America was in Vietnam, Johnson reportedly unzipped and gestured at his anatomy. as a foreign policy explanation. LBJ biographer Robert Caro documented Johnson's affairs extensively. What's fascinating is that some of these relationships weren't purely personal. Alice Marsh was valued by Johnson specifically for her political intelligence and advice. It was part of how Johnson operated. Everything was transactional. Everything was leverage. Even his romantic life served a strategic purpose. Lady Bird Johnson endured all of it with what biographers describe as extraordinary grace, and possibly an understanding that this was the cost of being married to the most powerful man in the world. Whether that makes her a saint or a victim depends on your perspective. Either way, LBJ's behavior was an open secret in Washington for decades. Nobody said a word. Now, everything we've talked about so far happened in an era when the press had a deal with the presidency. Don't ask, don't tell. Presidents did whatever they wanted. Reporters looked the other way. The public never found out until decades later, if ever. That arrangement shattered in the 1990s. Number 2. Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton's presidency had been shadowed by allegations of sexual misconduct before he even took office. During his 1992 campaign, a woman named Jennifer Flowers claimed she'd had a 12-year affair with Clinton while he was governor of Arkansas. Clinton denied it at first, then later admitted under oath that the relationship had occurred. But that was just the opening act. In 1995, a 22-year-old White House intern named Monica Lewinsky began a relationship with the president. Over the next 2 years, they had multiple encounters inside the White House, including in the Oval Office itself. When the story broke in 1998, Clinton looked directly into a camera and told the American people, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky." He was lying, and the evidence proved it. What followed was the most publicly dissected presidential affair in American history. Special prosecutor Kenneth Starr produced a 445-page report with graphic detail that was released to the entire nation. Clinton was impeached by the House of Representatives, not for the affair itself, but for lying under oath about it and obstructing justice. The Senate acquitted him. But beyond the legal proceedings, the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal fundamentally changed the relationship between the presidency and the press. The unwritten rule that had protected JFK and LBJ and everyone before them, that rule was gone. Permanently. Clinton survived politically. His approval ratings actually went up during the impeachment, hitting 73%, the highest of his presidency. The economy was booming. Many Americans decided they could separate the personal from the professional. But the cultural impact was seismic. Lewinsky's life was destroyed for decades. She became the punchline to 1,000 late-night jokes. Only in recent years has the conversation shifted toward recognizing the massive power imbalance between a 22-year-old intern and the most powerful person on Earth. Clinton forced America to answer a question it had been dodging since Thomas Jefferson. Does a president's personal behavior matter? The country was split then. It's still split now. Number 1. John F. Kennedy. Now, I already covered JFK at number 4. So why is he also number 1? Because there's a difference between being promiscuous and being the most promiscuous president in American history. And when you look at the full scope, the sheer volume, the recklessness, the national security implications, nobody else comes close. Historians estimate that Kennedy had affairs with dozens of women during his presidency alone, and that doesn't count his pre-presidential years. His behavior actually escalated after taking office, not slowed down. The White House staff had informal systems to manage the flow of visitors. Secret Service agents were put in impossible positions, sworn to protect the president, but also witnesses to behavior that could bring down the government. 2 details stand out above everything else. First, the 19-year-old White House intern, Mimi Alford, who wrote a memoir describing her relationship with the president. She was a college student on her 4th day of work when Kennedy initiated the relationship. She was 19. He was the President of the United States. Second, the sheer danger. Beyond Judith Exner and the mob connection, Kennedy's reckless behavior created multiple points of vulnerability. Any foreign intelligence service with knowledge of these affairs had leverage over the American president. In the middle of the Cold War, with nuclear weapons on the table, Kennedy's assassination in 1963 froze his image in amber. The young, handsome, inspiring president who was taken too soon. And there's truth in that. He was inspiring. He did change the country. The space program, the Peace Corps, the hope he represented, all of it was real. But the full picture includes a man who was fundamentally unable to control his personal impulses, even when those impulses threatened the security of the nation he led. The press knew, the FBI knew, the Secret Service knew, and nobody stopped it. JFK is number one on this list, not because his affairs were the most salacious. Harding's coat closet and LBJ's pool antics might win that contest. He's number one because the gap between his public image and his private behavior is the widest of any president in American history. Camelot was real, and so was everything behind the curtain. So, 10 presidents, spanning 250 years, from the Founding Fathers to the modern era. And the pattern that emerges is actually less about the presidents themselves and more about the systems around them. For most of American history, there was an invisible shield around the presidency. The press didn't report, the staff didn't talk, the public didn't ask. That shield protected Jefferson. It protected Harding. It protected JFK and LBJ. It even partially protected FDR, the man who died beside his mistress while the world thought he was working. Bill Clinton was the president who finally hit the wall. Not because what he did was worse than what came before, arguably JFK's behavior was far more dangerous, but because by the 1990s, the shield was gone. Cameras were everywhere. The 24-hour news cycle existed. If you haven't seen it yet, go check out our video on the 12 most loved presidents, because some of these names are on both lists, which says a lot about how America picks its heroes. If you have not subscribed yet, now would be a great time, and thank you. I'll see you in the next one.